we are in a pivotal moment in our nation's history as we reflect not only on the accomplishments realized under the Biden-Harris administration last, last 2 years, but also on the potential repercussion of alternative leadership, particularly the divisive vision attributed to Donald Trump. When we look at what Biden-Harris administration has done and during since taking office in January 2021, Biden-Harris administration, President Biden inherited this administration when the country was under divisive hate and going through a lot of chaos and crisis, not within the country but around the world as well. The country was struggling with COVID, and but under Biden-Harris administration, President Biden took the steps, and one after another. We talk about signing up the bipartisan infrastructure law, which was signed by President Biden 2 years ago. That means what 2 years have done through the infrastructure law. It has created good paying jobs by making the largest federal investment in public transit ever, creating roads and infrastructure, working to ensure that every American has access to reliable high-speed internet in rural areas at the lowest cost available to those who cannot afford it. Biden-Harris administration has created the highest number of jobs and lowest unemployment in the history. We have the great investment President Biden has made for the small business administration, making loans and grants available. We see that record number of small businesses have been started and are growing up under Biden-Harris administration. For Asian Americans, for Indian Americans, President Biden has started White House Economic Summit, which has been going around the country from New York to New Jersey to Philadelphia to Seattle to Bay Area to Sacramento to many cities where they're talking about how you can become a federal contractor, what are the different loans and grants available, and how you can access and expand your businesses and take advantage of the resources available. President Biden restored the U.S. leadership on the world stage, becoming leading the part of the NATO and restoring our leadership. We are supporting Ukraine at this point in time. We are also supporting Israel and the people of Gaza to make sure that we get rid of Hamas and peace is restored in the Middle East. U.S.-India relationship have been strengthened under President Biden's leadership, with the visit of Prime Minister Modi coming to U.S. and a state dinner, and expanding bilateral relationship with India, especially in the sector of defense and trade, and expanding the Quad to counterbalance China and the Indo-Pacific region. These two democracies are working together more strongly than ever to and to prove that to counterbalance China. We are also seeing We also saw the historic confirmation of Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson and federal judges under Biden-Harris administration. If we talk about ending gun violence, President Biden has started the Office of Gun Violence under Vice President Kamala Harris, and this is one of the most historic accomplishment to cut down the pandemic of gun violence in our country. And there's a lot more work to be done in this area, which I believe in the next administration, next term, President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris will be doing it. President Biden has taken steps to ending our failed approach to marijuana, or delivering the most aggressive climate and environment justice agenda in American history, making investment in the EV sector, making investment in solar technologies. A lot of new great paying jobs will be created, getting subsidies on Americans buying electronic vehicles, etc. That has been expanding. The Republicans had attacked the marriage for LGBTQ and interracial couples, whereas President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris is committed to protecting the rights of LGBTQ and interracial couples. When we look at the two strongest years of job growth in history, more than 40 million borrowers tend to benefit from student debt relief, which President Biden, has been benefiting the students. Nearly 11 million jobs has been created since 2021. Taken over 100 actions to lower household energy cost by $100 per year. This $100 means a lot to many people who are struggling, who have been struggling at the lower end of the economy. Help bring gas prices down more than $160 from the summer 2022 peak. President Biden signed the most significant gun violence prevention legislation in nearly 30 years, and he increased the maximum value of Pell grants by $900, which means a lot to the students who have been going to the colleges. Record 3.5% unemployment rate, the lowest in 50 years. We talk about a new record. Low unemployment rate for African Americans. We talk about a new record low unemployment rate for people with disabilities. We talk about millions of Americans are getting $800 per year on health insurance coverage, a saving of $800 per year. More Americans are covered under health insurance. $15 minimum wage for federal workers and contractors, and it's still we're talking about growing the rate of minimum wage to much higher to support the low wage paying workers and care workers. Fully vaccinated 79% of American adults against COVID-19 during the COVID crisis. President Biden led the historic release of strategic reserves infrastructure investment in all 50 states and territories and throughout the tribal nations. Over 16 million households received lower cost for free high-speed internet throughout affordable connectivity program. And I can keep going on. I mean, President Biden has done so much and he continues to do so much, and so this is a historic thing. But what happens if we look at the day one of Trump administration in 2024? If that person is voted to the presidency, we'll be looking at banning abortion, we'll be looking at separating families, we'll be looking at rounding up Latinos into camps, we'll be looking at flooding schools with guns, we'll be looking at Palestinians who have freedom to protest today in schools and colleges and around the country for Gaza. We'll be looking at deportation of those students with what Trump had said. We'll be looking at Muslim ban. We'll be looking at showing this Trump's vision for America, characterizing by extremism, fear, and violence, and seemingly designed to enrich the ultra wealthy with exploiting the most vulnerables. This is the vision of Trump we'll be looking at. So there's no place in this America, and we'll be looking at alignment of Trump with Russia or with other Korea. So this is not the vision which our country needs to heal further, and our country's soul needs to be strengthened. That is why we need 4 more years. This election is one of the most crucial elections, and Asian Americans, especially South Asian Americans, Indian Americans, have a historic role to play in this election.
So what kind of role they can play?
So in many battleground states, if we talk about Michigan, if we talk about Nevada, if we talk about Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Georgia, if we look at the data, we look at the Asian Americans and especially South Asian Americans, Indian Americans, they are the margin of victory in these states. If we get the all the population of Asian Americans, Indian Americans living out in this state turn out and vote for Biden, they will ensure that the victory is there. They did that same thing in 2022 elections. They did that for in earlier in 2020, and this time I'm hoping that our Asian Americans and Indian Americans will participate get involved in the election at the early stages. Get involved now. Why now? Because get organizing teams and get organizing the grassroots teams, building, reaching out. One of the most important thing is that reaching out to voters in their own languages. In 2020, I, along with many other thousands of volunteers, we made sure that we reach out the Asian Americans in almost 19 languages: Hindi, Punjabi, Telugu, Tamil, Chinese, and translating the campaign material and reach out. And that had a huge effect, and we would be able to do that.
So what are your plans for next year's election?
I guess the election cycle is already on, and we just had a great fundraising events throughout the country right now. I was in, so people are very enthusiastic, and the fundraising is going great, and there's a huge participation. We are raising for the general election while the Republican Party is busy fighting for the primary, and so we are preparing for the investment Democratic Party is making right now, and the campaign is making is in the grassroots investment in the battleground states, and that is what I'm talking about. Indian Americans getting involved at the early stage now to start organizing, to start building teams in their cities and states, so that they can connect with the voters and connect with the people and talk about the accomplishments of Biden-Harris administration. Talk about what, in simple terms, what President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris has done for the country, for them, and what would the next administration look like, and what would, if Trump is voted, how the destructive future could be, and that would get the tone going for the election and getting started. I mean,
Currently, there are two Indian Americans in the Republican Party running for presidency.
Yep.
What impact do you think would have on the voting pattern of Indian Americans?
Well, I mean, they're running in primary, and they're not going to. What I see the numbers, they're not going to make it to the nomination. Still, what the data indicates, the nomination could go to Trump. And but there are two things. I mean, what Vivek Ramaswamy says or Nikki Haley says, I disagree with almost 90% or 95% of it. I don't think they make any sense or anything. But it's a good to see the rise of Indian Americans in the U.S. politics overall. I mean, and it's good that more Indian Americans are getting now. What we see is that almost last in 2022 we saw that almost, if I don't have the data right, almost 40 Indian Americans getting elected across, Democratic Indian Americans getting elected across state senate in various around the country, state assembly or city council or mayors or school district, and this is giving that more and more Indian Americans are participating in the civic duties and politics and wanting to serve the country in various roles, which is a very matter of pride and great. I mean.